Hello, friends. I am Chevy. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? Hope it's fantastic. Everything here is great. Been doing something a little different this week. 5 days with 5 things to get to know me. This is the last day, the last 5 things to get to know me. We're talking about board games. I think most of you know that board games have been a big part of my life for a long, long time. This time I picked. Well, we'll talk about a couple of games when I get to it. So the first game, I guess in chronological order of them impacting my life. I would say I knew some of these games earlier than when I'm gonna put them in this list, but I'm gonna start with Settlers of Catan. I think that most people my age, most board gamers my age, could say they started there. It happened in 1996. Mayfair imported a bunch of Settlers of Catan from Germany, sold it at the Origins Game Fair. I was there working for United States Playing Cards, picked up that game, and it was the pink edition, like first edition. There was no English. The cards were in German, and they handed you a stapled packet of printer paper, black and white, that just had a text document, printed rules. There was no rule book in English, whatever. And so that was the first board game. Like that was, that's obviously not true, but that's the first Euro game that really started, and I mean this truly, really started what we call the board gaming industry today. There was a board game industry in existence at that time, but it was a very, very, very niche. Now it's just very, very niche. It was very, very, very niche back then. Very small industry. There was no chance that these games are going to sell in mass market. To walk into a Target now and see Settlers sitting on a shelf is mind blowing. Would have been mind blowing to a 17-year-old me in '96. And so immediately following that, the following year, I think it was the following year. I think it was '97, but maybe it was the same year. But I feel like it was not. I feel like it was '97. Was a game called Give Me the Brain. Give Me the Brain by James Ernest. Cheap Ass Games. That was the first game that I played where I went, I could do this. I could design this. Like, this isn't. It's fascinating. But it was a very accessible game design. And it's the first game where I thought, I can make these types of games. Like, he had, at that time, a small little booth where no interest in sales until he showed these games to people in an open gaming area and then sold out of everything he had. And he had like maybe 4 or 6 games that he had brought, that he had designed in these little white envelopes printed on cardstock. And I was like, I can make that. I can design those games. And that's when I started designing games. So '97. I said I was going to design my first game, and I did. Still have it. So around that same time, that same summer, so that must have been '97 because I left for the Marines that fall. I discovered Acquire. Acquire from, at that time, it was Avalon Hill. Prior to that, it was 3M. It was actually the Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing Company before they called themselves 3M. Acquire has long been my default number one answer for top game of all time. It is a very simple stock game that is perfect. In my opinion, it's the best 3-player, maybe 4-player. It is perfect. It is a perfect game. It's fantastic. I say it's perfect, but it's also not my. I've never rated a game a 10 on BGG. I think that Acquire is currently sitting at 9.6. There's I haven't filled the top 10 or that 10th spot, but Acquire is the closest. I just found a fascination with that game. It's just so beautiful. It's such a simple game, but it's so beautiful. And I think that everything on this list, aside from Settlers, is the same sort of thing. So sometime after that, during my time in the Marines, I discovered dominoes. I played dominoes my entire life, but I didn't know that if you've never played dominoes, it seems to be a very random game, and you're just kind of stuck with what you have, and it is. That's true. But like a lot of games like dominoes or hearts or rummy or whatever, a good player will win in the long run. And I didn't get that until I started playing it with real dominoes players in the Marines. There was a lot of Hispanic and Caribbean people that like to play dominoes. We would have these big barbecues and play dominoes all day long, and I really learned the love of the game. And I learned how a group of people it can become an identity. Like, I play dominoes, right? And that sounds completely bonkers to a board gamer because it is such a random game that it upsets me that it's hard for me to find somebody to play dominoes with. I love dominoes. And lastly, another stupid simple game, Coloretto. Coloretto by Michael Schacht. I love everything Michael's ever done, but Coloretto is the simplest game I've ever seen in my entire life. That is also the most brain-breaking. It is like the perfect design where I saw it and I was like, oh my god, this is such a beautiful game. You flip a card and decide to put it on a thing, or you take a thing. That's it. That's the entire game. It's we split, you choose, figure it out. Like, it's just freaking phenomenal. Such an amazing game. And it was another one of those games where I went, I want to design games like this. This is what I want to do. And I spent the next 15 years trying to design those Give Me the Brain, Coloretto, simple, accessible games. I really worked hard on that. And Scallywags was one of the results of that. It was definitely an outcome that was fueled by those simple games. Love Coloretto. So, again, like all of these other lists, there's tons of things I could have mentioned. I could have mentioned Imperial Settlers. Felt a little bit cheeky to throw a Portal game in there. I could have mentioned maybe even Talisman or Tales of the Arabian Nights for like a bigger, longer storytelling game. I could have mentioned Magic the Gathering, Decipher's Star Wars, Call of Cthulhu, any of the TCGs I played over the years, seriously. But I think that those 5 games are the 5 things that really drew me and kept me into the hobby, thinking that I could make a life out of this hobby. I could make a career, and I sought that for a long time. I wanted to make a career out of it, and yeah, there you go. What are your 5 favorites, or what is your number 1 favorite, or what's the one game that we could find to get to know you? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you again on Monday. Today's word you show sounds smart is solipsism. It is a noun meaning the notion that one's own experiences and thoughts are the only source of true knowledge. The solipsism of some members of the leisure class is distasteful to those of us who, for example, know what our servants need even more than they do. Solipsism. Solipsism. Man, these definitions sometimes. I got nothing.